Bless God. Tell you what, it's a gift to get up and preach in an atmosphere like this. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, that you're moving amongst your people. Thank you, Lord, for everything you've had to say this morning. Lord, I just pray, continue to speak to us. Amen. Amen. Well, I want to start this week with a passage from Matthew, where Jesus, just before he ascends to heaven, gives us a charge, gives us a commission. I want to read from Matthew 28, verses 19 to 20. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always, to the end of the age. These are the final words of Jesus before he ascends to heaven. We call it the Great Commission. It is so intrinsic to church and to who we are as a church, or who we should be as a church. It's in our mission statement. It's part of the reason we're here. But the Great Commission has always come with a problem. And we can find that problem summed up by its first part of its name, the word great. Because great is a scary word. It shows a huge task. Great can seem daunting. It can seem like a lot to live up to. After all nations includes a lot of people, yes? And we can think of the Great Commission. We can think of all nations, and we can seem so tiny, so small. Even if we were to take it and say, okay, not all nations, but this nation. That's a lot as well, isn't it? Okay, what if we shrunk it even further? Teesside. How many people live in Teesside? Well, at last estimate, it's around about 400,000 people in Teesside alone. That's pretty big as well, isn't it? Okay, let's reduce it even further. What about Billingham? How many people live in Billingham? Well, there's around about 37,000 people in Billingham. That's a lot. You see, when we think of the big of the commission, it can be a very daunting prospect. So in these coming weeks, I'd like to really focus the Great Commission and focus it to us. Bring it home here, now. You, us. Let's change our perception of the commission from impossible to possible. And to ask, what can each of us do to see our world touched by the good news of the gospel? I was spending some time praying over the coming year for us as a church, and the question I was asking God is, what's our next evangelistic strategy? It's a bit of a highfalutin question to ask, but it's one of those, we've had a year of the big festival Teesside and really focusing in on Invite Sundays, and what's the next thing, God, to focus on? And the answer was so simple. 2 little words that led me to 1 little word. And the 2 little words I got were these: get out. Get out. That's it. I don't know if that counts as a strategy. Get out. You see, the gospel is not for in here. The gospel is not meant to be contained within the church walls. Yes, we have specific Gospel Sundays focuses that we invite people into. That's good. But on the day-to-day, the place where each of us can be most effective for the gospel is not in here. Yeah? It's out there. And that's okay, because most of us don't spend most of our time in here. We spend most of our time out there. This is not your harvest field. We used to have a sign above the door that said, as you were leaving, you are now entering your harvest field. The more eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that sign's currently back up for a bit. The trouble is with a sign above the door that's above the door all the time is after a while, you don't see it. But for this next 2 months, while we're doing this series, that sign is going to remain above the door as a reminder. Every time we step out of those doors, we are entering our harvest field. We are entering our mission field. Get out. Get out. Sorry, I know you just came in, Julia. I wasn't aimed at you. By all means, invite people in. By all means, have that gospel focus. But the people that we invite, the people that we can have life-giving gospel conversations with, are not the people who are in this room right now. Get out. Now, I realize that doesn't sound like much of a strategy. But actually, the idea of getting out is at the root of every missional call. When we think in the scriptures of the servants sent out by the king in the parable of the banquet, listen to what he says to them. Go out to the highways and the byways. Go out, because there's nobody in here to invite. If we were to take it back to the words of Jesus, to the Great Commission, the Great Commission begins with one vital little word. Go. Go. That's the little word that the two little words brought me to. Go. What an important word that is. Sometimes we don't think about the little words. We breeze over them. We don't think, what does that word mean? Go means you move from one place to another. When you go, you don't stay in the place you are. Now, I know that's obvious, but sometimes you've got to say it. Go. You can't stay still and go. Go involves movement. Go means a shifting. Go means that you make an effort to be somewhere other than where you are right now. And the call that came from God this morning via Barbara was, move. Get moving. That requires movement. See, for the disciples, we see that they went. First, they went back to the city. And from there, they went to the rest of the country. And from there, they got out and went to the rest of the known world. But how do we make this call personal to us? I want you to think about, and I really want you to pray about, where is your goal? If you think about nothing else, and remember nothing else that I say this morning, and I realize that might be the case for some, think about this question. Where is my goal? Where is the place you can go where people need Jesus? That's it. And there's no wrong answer to that question. If we look a little longer into the sentence, Jesus said, go to all nations. Now, it might help if we look at some of the other Gospels to take their wording into consideration a little bit. The book of Mark says this, Mark 16, verses 15 and 16. He said to them, "Go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved. Whoever does not believe will be condemned." All the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. If you're reading the New Living Translation, it says everyone. The King James Version, it says every creature. Luke actually places his mention in the book of Acts, Acts 1 verse 8. "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the end of the earth." It starts local here, then it moves out a bit further, and then it moves out further, and then poof, everywhere. So we get this, all nations. That seems vague and big. In Mark we get every person. That brings it home to the individual. And in Acts we get at home and further afield. That means wherever you go is the right place to go. Because there will be people who need Jesus anywhere you go. It also means that starting small, starting near, is okay. It also means this: you can make a difference. You can. Even if it's slow, even if it starts here, you can make a difference. Even if it feels like you're swimming against the tide and you're getting nowhere, you can make a difference. Little by little is how transformation happens. Let me tell you a story about a man called Jadev Payeng. Anybody ever heard of Jadev Payeng? Aha, we have one. Well, if you don't know him, that's him. He lives in an area called the Assam region of India, around something called the Majuli River. Now, this river causes extensive soil erosion, and large parts of it are just complete barren wasteland. This area has shrunk in its vegetation over the past 70 years by more than half. There were concerns that it could actually be submerged within the next 20 years. So to fight this, in 1980, the government of India put a plan in place to reforest 200 hectares of the forest. However, by the time they got to 1983, they realized it was too expensive and abandoned it. Sounds like a government, doesn't it? But over 40 years ago, this guy, Jadev Payeng, he wanted to make a difference in his area. He's one man. What difference could he really make? He is the son of a poor buffalo trader. And he started planting trees in 1979 as a teenager. In fact, that's the picture of him planting one tree. It said he'd seen a pile of dead snakes in the sand and realized something was wrong. So he went to the sand and he planted. He started planting something he had. He had some bamboo. So he planted some bamboo. As time went on, he began planting other species in the area. And little by little, he added to it, and it grew. He planted one thing at a time, one thing a day, for 40 years. Now his forest encompasses an area of 1,360 acres. 550 hectares of forest. The area can be compared to the size of 15 football stadiums together. Bigger than the area the government couldn't do. planting done by him is larger now than Central Park in New York City. Thanks to him, and the area now known as the Malay Forest houses Bengal tigers, Indian rhinoceroses, reptiles, over 100 deer and rabbits, monkeys, birds and vultures. There are several thousand trees. Bamboo alone covers an area over 300 hectares. The government only found out about this forest in 2008, when a herd of 100 wild elephants strayed into it. The elephants have now stayed there and have given birth to 10 calves in the forest. The man who tried to save the island where he lives by planting one tree every day has built a forest by himself. He is known as the Forest Man of India. There's a children's book about his life called The Boy Who Planted a Forest. You get the point here. If we keep going, even if it's a little bit at a time, even if it's one person that gets our focus at a time, little by little, if we keep on going, if we don't give in, we can make a difference. Planting one tree a day can lead to a forest. If the call is to every person and every nation, wherever you take the gospel is the right place to take the gospel. See, the problem with evangelism sometimes is we can get so laser focused on one method, or one people group, or one place, that we can cause a number of stumbling blocks. When one way becomes the only way, it gets in the way. Let me give you an example of this. Now, please, I'm using this method as an example, and just as an example. I am not belittling this method or this type of evangelism at all. It's important. But it's a good example. The servants are called to the highways and the byways. Paul preached in the marketplace. So the place to preach the gospel is on the streets. See, that's how it was done. That's how it should be done. Street evangelism then can become the only way to do evangelism. This is what evangelism is. If you're not doing this, you're not doing evangelism. Or we can have Jesus proclaimed good news to the poor. Therefore, that is what evangelism is. We must reach to those who have no home, those who are in addiction. That's what Jesus said. Those are the people to reach. If you're not reaching these people, then you are not doing evangelism properly. Do you see what we've done both times there? In both of these examples, we've turned the ends of the earth into one place. We've turned all people into one people group. We've narrowed the window so much. And the result can be, well, first you have people who think, well, if I can't do that, I mustn't be an evangelist. Yeah? Anyone ever felt that? Therefore, I'm counted out of the Great Commission. Then you find the streets, people who think the streets are hard and they don't think they can do it, go, well, clearly evangelism isn't for me. Then you have less workers in the field. The reality is some people are very good in that area of outreach, and we have some of them here, and some people aren't. To the ones who are good at that, go for it. You found your goal. To those who aren't, what it means is you haven't found your goal yet. It's the same with reaching to the poor. Some people struggle with knowing what to say or what to do and think, well, I guess that means outreach isn't for me. If this is what it means to be a witness, I guess I'm not a witness. And yet again, we have less people in the harvest field. All the other groups of people in society get missed because all people becomes one group of people. To those who are good at reaching out to the poor, that's great. You found your all people. Wonderful. But to those who aren't, it's not that the commission isn't for you, it's that you haven't found your group of people that you can reach. Those who don't thrive in that method start to think evangelism is not for them. So there's three things that happen when we do this. First, those who don't thrive in this method start to think evangelism isn't for them. Second, those who do this get frustrated at everybody else for not being part of this. And third, everybody else in the world who needs the gospel gets missed. Because what happens is the goal becomes a very narrow place. What if, church, we didn't do that? What if we didn't look at somebody else's goal? We saw somebody else's goal and we thought, bless God, they're doing a great job there. Isn't that wonderful? What if each of us asked, where, God, is my goal? What if instead of looking at somebody else and judging them, or looking at somebody else and feeling you're not as good as them, we take individual accountability for the Great Commission? If we were each of us to say, God, where are you calling me? God, who are the people you would have me reach? Personalize it. Take responsibility, not for the place somebody thinks you should be at, but the place that God is asking you to go. See, I think if we respond to the places where we see the lack of gospel, if we all respond to the peer groups that we see the need in, then I believe as a church we can reach all people in all areas and everybody can be involved. If we can personalize our goal, we will reach a broader spectrum of people and have more people in the harvest field. And we wouldn't be so intimidated by it. Church, identify your goal. That is the greatest missional thing each of us could do. Where is God sending me? Pray about it. Ask God to show you the people and the places that God wants you to reach. Now, for some of us in this room have been walking with God for an extended period of time. Can I say, sometimes in that case, the question to ask God, because some people have been following God for a long time and done great things for God. But the question is, has your goal changed? Because we have different seasons in life, don't we? Where God called you once might not be where God is calling you today. The people you were once most effective with might not be the people that you're most effective with now. See, sometimes when we get a little older, we can start to go, well, I can't do what I used to do. Anybody ever said that? Yeah. Therefore, I guess this is coming to the end for me. No. It's just the goal, the place, the area, the where. The who has changed, not the commission. Jesus said to the early church that you would be witnesses in Jerusalem, then Judea and Samaria, then to the ends of the earth. Their goal changed over time. I wonder if John, when he was younger, thought he was ever going to be looking after a church in Ephesus. Couldn't have imagined it. Where God had you once doesn't mean that's where God will have you stay. New possibilities open up. See, new seasons in life don't mean the call goes. It means the place you've been called changes. It means the method that you use might be changing. But the call to go doesn't go. When they were dispersed from Jerusalem, their go changed. When your life circumstances change, it can bring you into a whole new mission field. But it takes us recognizing that, because a new field might require a different method. When the church was in Jerusalem, for example, it was very easy to explain Jesus in a Jewish context because, well, you were in Jerusalem. When you're out in the Roman Empire, when you're out in Asia Minor, it's going to take some different conversations. Paul's a great example of this. Paul finds himself, and he goes around, he starts preaching in the synagogues, he preaches in halls, homes, wherever he can get. But he needs to find ways to make his message culturally relevant. So he sees the statue to the unknown God and takes this Greek concept and uses it to talk about Jesus. See, Paul always knew the city that he was in. He knew the people that he was speaking to. You know, we're surrounded by a culture that doesn't know Jesus and doesn't even know it's searching for him. So it is completely legitimate to take things from our surrounding culture where we can see the search and use those things to talk about Jesus. Music. We can use music that wasn't written by a Christian, but was written by somebody searching, if we think it's going to help reach somebody. TV, film. You see, what we have there is cultural touch points, and if we can use it to explain Jesus, use it. Paul was never shy about that. For all of us, we have a go. I hope I've said that enough times that you won't forget I've said it. It will not be the same as somebody else's go. Some are called to the streets. Some are called to boardrooms. Don't be fooled. Both have lost people in them who need Jesus. Some are called to friends, some to family, some to the street where you live. Some are called online. It's a very new mission field. But there's people there who need Jesus. Your workplace, your social group, the people you sit in a sauna with. The question is not, do you have a mission field? The question is, where is your mission field? And the answer comes through prayer. But I think it also comes through answering a very simple question. When you get out, when you're not here, where are you? Where's God already put you? Who has God already placed you amongst? Who are the people that you are the only person that they know who could invite them to come meet Jesus? Who are they? Because I can guarantee there are people in all of our lives where we are the only connection point. The only route to them being introduced to Jesus, short of somebody knocking on their door. You know who knocks on the doors. How can we say that they aren't a part of our goal? They're all around us. The great question I want you to be challenged today by is not, should I go? Because we know that what answer to that one is, we should. I don't think that's even disputable. The question is, where is my go? If you think you can't do it, I believe it's because you've not found your go yet. You've not found your place. You've not found your people. But be encouraged this morning. Your harvest field is there. But you won't find it in here. Are you going? Are you getting out? I think the problem for many of us is this. I would get up and go. Got up and went. You know, this morning we sang, there's an army rising up. Is that true? Is it true? Are we an army that's rising up, or are we an army that's at rest? Barbara shared this morning, it's time to move. Move means go. Army, consider this your marching orders. Now, can it be hard to go? Yes, absolutely. I don't see any of the early church having an easy time of it. That's why Jesus ends the Great Commission with these important words. And behold, I am with you always, to the end of the age. It's good to be standing 2,000 years from that, knowing that's still true. We are not doing this alone. Jesus is with us. And we need to know when it's hard, when we're discouraged, we are not alone. We also need to know when we feel we're not doing well, when we feel weak, remember it's never, ever in your own strength that we do it. In fact, it's in our weakness that his strength is made perfect. The fact that I can't do this on my own is not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing. Our goal is to be a witness. That's the term Jesus used in Mark. Be a witness. What does a witness do? They testify to what they've seen, to what they know. They tell the story of what happened to them. We just witness to what he's done and who he is. And if we don't see any results, we keep on testifying. We keep on being a witness. You may be planting, you may be watering, you may never get to see the growth in somebody's life, but that doesn't mean the growth isn't happening. That doesn't mean the seeds are not doing something under the ground. The call for us is to be faithful in the work regardless of what we can see. It's God who makes the difference. It's God who gives the increase. If you've lived your whole life and you've tried, and I feel it, it doesn't mean success isn't there. It means you just haven't seen it. With that in mind, I'd like us to listen to this story. And I hope that this will be an encouragement to all of us, especially to those who've never seen a result. In the 1950s, in a Baptist church in Bournemouth, one Sunday night, the pastor, Dr. Francis Dixon, asked his youth pastor, Peter Culver, to share his testimony. Peter got up and said, "This is how I was saved. I was in the Royal Navy. I was walking down George Street in Sydney, Australia, and out of nowhere stepped a man. And he said to me, 'Excuse me, sir, could I ask you a question? I hope that it won't offend you. But if you were to die today, where would you spend eternity? The Bible says that it will either be in heaven or in hell. What do you think about that place? Thank you. God bless you.' Then the man gave him a tract and left. I'd never been confronted with that question. I couldn't get it out of my mind. I got back to England and met someone who took me to a mission, and that is where I became a Christian. Sometime later, there was a youth meeting in the same church in Bournemouth, and one of the visiting team, a guy called Noel, shared his testimony. I was in the Royal Navy, and my ship was stationed in Sydney. One evening, I was walking down George Street, when out of nowhere stepped a man. He said to me, 'Young man, I have a question to ask you. If you should die tonight, where would you go?'
Would it be heaven or hell? What he said bothered me for many months. I sought out a Christian. He helped me, and I gave my life to Christ. Francis Dixon was now very puzzled. 2 stories. Not long afterwards, he was preaching in Adelaide in South Australia when he decided to tell the story of Peter and Noel's separate encounters with the man in George Street. As he did so, a man jumped up excitedly and said, I'm another. I was drawn to receive Christ in the same way by the same man on George Street." This was Corporal Murray Wilkes, who had been in a hurry to catch this tram on George Street when a voice behind him called, "Hey, wait." Murray turned around. The stranger in front of him asked, "Soldier, if you were to die tonight, where would you go? Would it be heaven or hell?" "I'd hope to go to heaven," replied Murray. "Hoping isn't good enough," said the stranger, and gave him a tract. This question exposed a raw nerve in Murray's life. Though he was a good, living, church-going, married man, he also knew he was a hypocrite and had never faced the question of eternal destiny. 2 weeks later, Murray knelt in the army barracks and gave his life to Christ. Francis Dixon continued his tour, and again, while preaching in Perth, he shared these stories. Afterwards, a young man came up to him and told him he too had been in the Navy and had visited George Street, and he had become a Christian after meeting the stranger with the compelling question. When Dr. Dixon finally arrived in Sydney, he was eager to find out more about this urban missionary, and he asked a Christian worker called Alec Gilchrist, "Who is this man in George Street?" "I know him well," was the reply. "His name is Frank Jenner." Francis Dixon was taken to a humble little house where he was introduced to Frank. Francis relayed the story of the 4 young servicemen who'd come to know Christ through his simple question. And Frank began to weep, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I have never heard that anyone I'd spoken to had gone on for the Lord," he said. Frank had carried on this work for 16 years, asking the question and giving out tracts, and this was the first time he'd heard of any lasting results. I would say he would have to be really committed to show that sort of gratitude and love for Jesus, to do that for so many years and not hear of any of the results. Francis Dixon preached around the world. When he did, he would tell the story of Frank Jenner from time to time. In the UK at the Keswick Convention, pastors came up to him saying they'd been stopped by that stranger with that question. In India at a missionary convention, where an Indian man had come to Sydney on one visit, had been confronted by Frank's question and received Christ and gone into ministry. In Jamaica at a missionary conference, where a couple of missionaries had come to Jesus years before through Frank Jenner's witness. In the United States, a naval chaplains conference, he shared about this man of George Street and his witness, and a chaplain stood up and shared that he too had come to Christ as a result of Frank Jenner's question. It has been estimated that over the years, Frank talked to more than 100,000 people, actually more than most pastors would address in their lifetime. Jenner was eccentric, the very opposite of the wise, mighty and noble, but his life was therefore a good demonstration of 2 Corinthians 12:9, which states that God's power is made perfect in weakness. I don't think Frank Jenner's face would ever have been published on the cover of a prestigious Christian publication, or his story carry more than a few paragraphs in a Christian magazine. But God has made sure that his story has been told to honour this man who honoured Jesus so much by showing Dr. Dixon that so many lives had been transformed. Frank Jenner, in his own way, and to the embarrassment of some Christians, got to the heart of the issue. He directly challenged sailors about their standing with God. Now, his simple question is not a formula for us to copy, but his life is a wonderful testimony of how God can use those who remain faithful to him.
"16 years. He'd never heard of one person making a decision. You don't know the impact you can have when you remain faithful to the gospel. Who will go? Here I am. Send me." May the Lord bless you all. Now get out. Thank you, Cliff.